The mid-latitudes of the Northern Hemisphere. From January to March, our viewpoint for the night sky. It's mid-evening, and we're looking north. We approach the crossroads of the northern sky, the 7 stars of the Plough or Big Dipper. The pattern is part of a bigger formation, the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. In mythology, the bear is a nymph transformed as punishment for an illicit love affair. Back with the Big Dipper, its stars lose their familiar pattern if we circle around them. This imaginary spaceflight reveals their varying distances from Earth. In the handle of the Plough or Big Dipper, a double star, Mizar, and its fainter companion, Alcor. Distant Alcor, here in animation, is quite far from Mizar. Big telescopes show Mizar has a much closer twin, and the same may be true for Alcor. From the stars Merak and Dubhe to Polaris, the North Star or Pole Star. Polaris is in Ursa Minor, the Little Dipper or Little Bear. Returning to the Big Dipper and close to Merak lies the Owl Nebula, M97. Through a moderate telescope, a shell of gas surrounding a white dwarf, a dying star. A little to the west of the Big Dipper is the Spiral Galaxy, M81, visible with binoculars, better in a small telescope. And just to the north, M82, an edge-on spiral. Both galaxies are some 10 million light-years from Earth. Northeast of our stellar signpost, another spiral galaxy, M101, 23 million light-years distant. It can be glimpsed in small telescopes. Extend a line from Merak and Dubhe through the pole star Polaris, and we arrive at Cassiopeia, nestling in the Milky Way. A vain mythological queen, banished to circle the pole star forever. Cassiopeia forms a W or M-shaped constellation. Here, star fields abound. Clusters like M52, visible in binoculars. And to the right, the Bubble Nebula, NGC 7635. Just north of Cassiopeia, the site of Tycho's star, a supernova of 1572. So brilliant was the outburst, it could be seen in broad daylight by naked eye. A white dwarf had exploded. Close by Cassiopeia, a radio image. In fact, the strongest radio source in the sky, Cassiopeia A. It's the remnant of a supernova of about 1660. Again, for a signpost, we go to the Plough, the Big Dipper. Draw a line toward the zenith, our overhead point, and we reach the yellow star, Capella. Capella is in the constellation of Auriga, the charioteer. It's a large and prominent pattern. But it's also incomplete. The outline stops short of Alnath, a star now officially assigned to neighbouring Taurus. Nevertheless, Alnath still looks better in Auriga. To Capella, sixth brightest star in the heavens. Capella really is 2 stars, 42 light-years from Earth. They're giants, the largest 18 million kilometers across, 13 times the diameter of the Sun. Once more in Auriga, a triangle known as the Heidi, kids of the goat star Capella. Brightest is Epsilon Aurigae. And again it's more than one. Every 27 years this remote supergiant temporarily fades to half its normal brilliance. One theory is that it's eclipsed by a pair of companions shrouded in a dusty disk. Also in the Heidi, the binary star Zeta Aurigae. When the orange giant is eclipsed by its smaller companion, Zeta's combined brightness drops by 25%. Auriga straddles the Milky Way, its star fields visible in binoculars. Clusters like M38, M36, and M37. From two stars in the Plough, the Big Dipper, a line points the way to the star Murphak. It's in the constellation of Perseus, high in the western sky. Perseus, a hero of Greek mythology, lies in an abundant region of the Milky Way. Through binoculars or a small telescope, a pattern well worth sweeping. A wider perspective to discover two rather obscure patterns that occupy large areas high in the northern sky. The first is Camelopardalis, the giraffe. Set to the east of Perseus, Camelopardalis is devoid of bright stars. The adjacent constellation of Lynx is slightly better. It has one bright star, but cynics say you need the eyes of a lynx to make out the pattern. Our final vista of the northern sky. From the mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere, this is our view to the south. One pattern dominates the sky, Orion, a constellation bedecked with magnificent nebulae and brilliant stars. Orion is the constellation of the hunter. He's killed by a scorpion and placed in the heavens, so that as Scorpius' slayer rises, Orion sets. Stars at the center form Orion's belt, and from the belt hangs a sword. But this is our earthly perspective. If we twice fly a circle through space, the 7 principal stars of Orion appear to change their relative positions. What they're really showing is their different distances from Earth. Turn Orion on its side and progressively defocus the camera, and here are the true colors of the stars. Most are hot and blue-white, indicating a surface temperature between 12,000 and 35,000 degrees. Upper left in Orion, the star is orange because its surface is much cooler. This is the realm of Betelgeuse, a giant 15 times more massive than the Sun. Placed in the solar system, Betelgeuse would stretch 3/4 of the way to Jupiter. At the tip of Orion's sword, a great wonder of the sky. To the naked eye, a misty patch. Through a big telescope, a cosmic sensation. M42, the great nebula in Orion. A cloud of dust and gas 30 light-years across. A place where stars are born. More than 4.5 billion years ago, our sun was spawned from such a cloud. A newborn star in a dusty cocoon, and another, just discernible. Animation shows how such a cocoon flattens into a disk around a young star. As the disk clears and consolidates, so planetary systems are thought to form. The belt of Orion hides another wonder, close to the star Zeta Orionis, also known as Alnitak. Alnitak is upper left, and the Flame Nebula next to it. In this, the most celebrated image of the cosmos, the Horsehead Nebula, a billowing cloud of dust invisible to all but the most powerful telescope. To the left foot of Orion, and the brilliant superstar Rigel. Rigel is 770 light-years distant and 60,000 times brighter than the Sun. A small companion, an ordinary star, is all but lost in Rigel's glare. A wider view to the south, and beneath Orion, Lepus, the constellation of the Hare. To the right, Eridanus, the celestial river, one of the largest and longest constellations. With Orion as our pointer, extend a line from the belt and we reach the bright star Aldebaran. Aldebaran is in Taurus. Taurus is a constellation of the zodiac, so the sun, the moon and the planets sometimes move against these background stars. Taurus is the constellation of the Bull, Aldebaran his glinting eye. It's a useful shape, for the face of the Bull is this V-shaped cluster of stars, the Hyades or Hyades, well seen in binoculars. Nearby another cluster, the Pleiades or Seven Sisters. Pronounced Pleiades in Europe, the naked eye sees 7 stars, binoculars dozens more. In fact, there are hundreds, hot, young and bright. Taurus again, and to the tip of the Bull's horn, to the star Zeta Tauri, close by, through a small telescope, a misty patch. But through a big telescope, the Crab Nebula, the debris of a supernova, the result of a gigantic stellar explosion. The supernova was seen next to a crescent moon in 1054, this a cave painting by the Pueblo Indians. Within the Crab Nebula, a remnant of the exploded star spins at 30 times a second, beaming radiation. It's a pulsar or neutron star, matter jetting from its poles. Still in Taurus, we discover 2 interacting galaxies. A pipeline carries material from one to the other. They're galaxies NGC 1409 and 1410. A line from Orion's belt through Betelgeuse leads to the star Castor. Castor is white, while its near neighbour Pollux is orange. They're the twins of Gemini, another constellation of the zodiac. The respective stars form the heads of this celestial pair, supposedly the protectors of sailors. But fact is stranger than myth. In a small telescope, Castor appears as a double star. Spectroscopy reveals 6, 4 hot and white, 2 dull and red. Triple binaries, too close to separate even with a big telescope. Again in Gemini, just visible to the naked eye, the cluster M35, hundreds of stars. Now from Gemini to NGC 2392, the Eskimo Nebula, a central dying star puffs off shells of debris. At the trusty signpost of Orion, this line via Betelgeuse points to Procyon, the brilliant star of Canis Minor, the little dog. Procyon is close, just 11.4 light-years from Earth, and with 7 times the luminosity of the Sun, Procyon shines bright. Who would guess at its dim companion, a dying white dwarf? Between Orion and Canis Minor, the constellation of Monoceros, the unicorn. We home in on a cauldron of starbirth, glowing gas, dark lanes of dust, and at the top, the star S Monocerotis. To the south, and invisible in small telescopes, the Cone Nebula. Set against luminous gas, hot young stars illuminate the cone. Finally in Monoceros, to the Rosette Nebula. Parts are visible with a small telescope. The full picture only in the most powerful instrument. Here a clutch of baby stars and a nest of glowing gas. East of both Monoceros and Gemini to the rather obscure stars of Cancer the Crab, another constellation of the zodiac. In Greek mythology, the crab was crushed by Hercules as he fought Hydra the sea serpent. The crab was compensated with a place in the stars. And what stars as we approach M44, the Beehive cluster. By naked eye, a misty patch. In binoculars, a swarm of 50 stars. In Gemini, from Castor and Pollux, extend a line to a small stellar group. It's the head of Hydra, the constellation of the sea serpent. Go on, and we reach Alphard, Hydra's brightest star. For the last pointer in the southern sky, the perspective widens to include the signpost of Orion. From the studs in Orion's belt, a line carries us to Sirius, the brightest star in the heavens. Sirius is in Canis Major, the big dog, with Canis Minor, the two hounds of Orion the hunter. Indeed, Sirius is the dog star, and in this telescopic footage there's a tiny companion, a white dwarf called the Pup. Our skies from the northern hemisphere. The mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere, from October to December, are viewpoint for the night sky. It's mid-evening and we're looking north. Nights are colder and longer, and the daytime sun is lower in the sky. The same goes for the Plough or Big Dipper, its seventh star hidden beneath the horizon. The pattern is part of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. From farther north, of course, the whole constellation is visible. In Ursa Major, two stars point to the fifth brightest star in the heavens, Vega. Vega dominates Lyra, the constellation of the Harp or Lyre. Despite its proximity to the horizon, Ursa Major is an invaluable signpost. The stars Merak and Dubhe direct an arc to the pole star, Polaris. Polaris is in Ursa Minor, the constellation of the Little Bear. Curving onward, the arc reaches Cassiopeia, the mythical queen banished to the heavens for her vanity. But, lying in the Milky Way, the constellation is truly beautiful. Starfields abound, glorious through binoculars and small telescopes. One such is NGC 663, an open cluster near the star Rukbar. Slightly closer to Rukbar, M103, an irregular open cluster. And to the other side of Rukbar, NGC 457, a looser open cluster. From two stars in Cassiopeia, a line to Alderamin, brightest star in the constellation of Cepheus, husband of Cassiopeia and king of Ethiopia. Lower in the sky to a pattern coiled around the north celestial pole. This is Draco, the dragon, with Eltonin at the dragon's head, its brightest star. Northwest and spanning the Milky Way, the majestic constellation of Cygnus the Swan. The mighty star Deneb is the tail. Overhead and right from Cygnus, the zigzag of Lacerta, the lizard. Although its stars are inconspicuous, Lacerta lies partly in the Milky Way and boasts at least one splendor. NGC 7243 is a scattered open cluster of several dozen stars and visible in small telescopes. Also in Lacerta, but clear of the Milky Way, an object seen only in the biggest amateur telescope. BL Lacertae isn't a star, but the bright nucleus of a remote quasar-like galaxy. Such phenomena, called BL Lax, can double their brilliance in a day. With the Milky Way strung above, we return to Ursa Major for a signpost. The stars Migres and Dubhe point to the sixth brightest star in the heavens, Capella. Capella is in Auriga, the charioteer. Straddling the Milky Way, Auriga is large and prominent. Again from Ursa Major, Fad and Dubhe return us to the Milky Way and Murphak, a supergiant. Through binoculars, Murphak sits in a brilliant scattering of stars, the abundant constellation of Perseus, the hero. In Greek mythology, Perseus slayed the Gorgon, Medusa, and rescued Andromeda, daughter of Cepheus and Cassiopeia. The handle of his sword marks two of the finest open clusters in the sky. Magnificent in binoculars, NGC 884 and 869 are just visible by naked eye. Higher in Perseus, to Medusa's evil eye, Algol, the star that winks. It does so because Algol is a binary, two stars whose combined brilliance appears to vary as they eclipse each other. Close to Algol, the Perseus cluster of galaxies. Visible only in large telescopes, they include a so-called Seyfert galaxy, possibly with a black hole, and jetting out material at near the speed of light. The Seyfert NGC 1275 has a brilliant quasar-like nucleus, but it's less energetic. Near the far western star of Perseus is M76, the Little Dumbbell Nebula, a shell of gas puffed off by an old sun-like star. It's just visible in a moderate telescope. The naked eye star, Minkib, or Xi Persei, illuminates NGC 1499, the California Nebula, again just visible in a moderate telescope. Northeast of Perseus, to the far right, and partly in the Milky Way, are the stars Castor and Pollux. They're the heads of the twins in the constellation of Gemini. Lower in the sky, the obscure pattern of Lynx, but with a small telescope, Lynx has some good double stars. To the southwest, the equally dim constellation of Camelopardalis, the Giraffe. Within it, and at the very edge of naked eye visibility, the open cluster NGC 1502. Binoculars reveal some 45 stars. A final view of the northern sky. The panorama south has Orion, the constellation of the Hunter, far left. Next door is Taurus, the bull, another bold and distinctive pattern. To the west, Greek mythology suggests a group of stars born from the blood of Medusa. It's Pegasus, the winged horse, with the familiar square. Upper left in the square, the star that was once Delta Pegasi now belongs to neighbouring Andromeda, but we're headed just right of the square. This is 51 Pegasi, the first star like our Sun to be discovered with a planet. At half the mass of Jupiter, but far hotter, the planet whirls around the star in little over 4 days. 51 Pegasi is just visible by naked eye. So is this globular cluster M15, its collapsed core jammed with stars. The density is a puzzle, caused perhaps by intense mutual gravity or a black hole. Higher in Pegasus to NGC 7331, a spiral edge-on galaxy, visible on good nights through a moderate telescope. Close by, the same applies to NGC 7339 and 7332, two galaxies, although not obviously interacting, probably orbiting one another. Half a degree south, 5 galaxies known as Stephan's Quintet, best observed in the most powerful amateur telescope. South of Pegasus, and only seen in big telescopes, the Einstein Cross. Multiple images of the same quasar surround a central galaxy. Without the galaxy, light from the distant quasar would travel directly to Earth. But with the galaxy, its gravity creates a crazy lens. Light from the quasar is bent. Through the Hubble Space Telescope, this gravitational lensing gives us 4 images of the quasar, with the lensing galaxy in the middle. Finally in Pegasus, and only in large telescopes, the Seyfert galaxy, NGC 7742. Light from its brilliant core takes 72 million years to reach us. From their shared star, here called Alpheratz, the constellation of Andromeda unfurls from Pegasus. Andromeda, the princess rescued by Perseus, is home to the Andromeda Galaxy, M31. Like a big sister of the Milky Way, Andromeda is a spiral with 2 companion galaxies. By naked eye, on a clear night, it's the most distant object we can see. Upper right in Andromeda, the planetary nebula NGC 7662, one of the brightest and most easily seen by small telescope. Lastly, in Andromeda, to the galaxy NGC 891. Although difficult even in a moderate telescope, this edge-on spiral is one of the best of its kind. Immediately beneath Andromeda and Pegasus are the faint stars of Pisces. Pisces is the constellation of the fishes, supposedly tied from their tails to the star Alpha Piscium. The pattern has two special features. The first is this circlet of stars. The second is that the Sun, the Moon and the planets all pass through Pisces as a member of the zodiac. Close to the upper fish lies the galaxy M74. Although the brightest in Pisces, it still needs a moderate telescope. East of Pisces is where the Sun used to move from south to north across the celestial equator. 2,000 years ago, the constellation of Aries marked the spring equinox. Today, this annual transition happens in Pisces. In mythology, Aries is the ram whose golden fleece was sought by Jason and the Argonauts. A wider view to locate a faint but distinctive pattern between Aries and Andromeda, the tiny constellation of Triangulum, the triangle. Its three main stars were well known to the ancients, resembling the Greek letter delta. To their right is M33, the pinwheel or triangulum galaxy. This face-on spiral, good in binoculars, belongs to our local group, although it's smaller than the Milky Way and Andromeda. In the arms of M33, stellar nurseries abound, like this region, NGC 604, with more than 200 hot and massive young stars. Still looking south from the northern hemisphere, the constellation of Cetus is center stage. Cetus is a large but faint pattern depicting a whale or sea monster. Supposedly it threatened Andromeda before Perseus saved her. Our target is Mira, the wonderful star, a pulsating supergiant orbited by a white dwarf. Varying from naked eye to small telescope visibility, Mira was the first long-period variable discovered. North of Mira, toward the head of Cetus, M77, with its bright active core, our closest safe-at galaxy, and good in moderate telescopes. West from Cetus, to a zodiacal constellation, one of three linked with water. This is Aquarius, the water-bearer, named by the Babylonians who visualized a figure pouring water from a pitcher, an image still used today. To the left in Aquarius, and visible by small telescope, is the variable star R Aquarii. As a Mira type, it's a supergiant with a white dwarf drawing off material. Periodic fireworks result. To the right in Aquarius is NGC 7009, the Saturn planetary nebula, like this in the Hubble Space Telescope, reminiscent of Saturn in small instruments. Higher in Aquarius, to what appears as a fuzzy blob in binoculars, M2, a rich and compact globular cluster lying well beyond our galactic center. Finally, low in Aquarius, NGC 7293, the famous Helix planetary nebula, best in a moderate telescope. The helix is shells of gas expelled in the death throes of a star a little bigger than our Sun. At its heart, all that remains is a white dwarf. In the panorama south, the constellation of Eridanus the river meanders from Orion to the horizon. Upper right, two stars in the square of Pegasus point to the bright star Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut, just 22 light-years away, is in the constellation of Piscis Austrinus, the southern fish. We go closer to identify two faint and half-forgotten patterns. The first is Sculptor, for a reason as obscure as its stars, a sculptor's studio. The second is Fornax, the furnace, equally barren. From the northern hemisphere, the constellations south. The mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere. From July to September, our viewpoint for the night sky. It's mid-evening, and we're looking north. Nights are short and warm, and at noon the sun is high overhead. The Plough, or Big Dipper, is easily spotted in these summer skies. The pattern forms part of Ursa Major, the constellation of the Great Bear, with its elongated tail. From a curve in the tail to Arcturus, brightest star of Bertes, the constellation of the herdsman. Two more stars in Ursa Major, the pointers, signpost Polaris, the pole star. Polaris is in Ursa Minor, the little bear, and that curve from the pointers leads on to the star Gamma Cassiopeiae in the constellation of Cassiopeia. In mythology, Cassiopeia was a beautiful but boastful queen. Intriguingly, the Sun would be a yellow star in Cassiopeia if viewed from our nearest stellar neighbour, Alpha Centauri. Two stars in Cassiopeia direct us to Alpha Cephei, clearest star in the faint constellation of Cepheus, the king. Supposedly, Cepheus ruled Ethiopia, and Cassiopeia was his queen. At the top of the pattern, in a little trio, is Delta Cephei, a star that brightens and dims as it expands and contracts. It's called a Cepheid variable. Here's another, bigger and brighter, but pulsing more slowly. By comparing Cepheid variables, so-called standard candles, astronomers calculate distances in the near universe. With the Milky Way arching overhead to the east, we search for the dim stars of Draco. This straggling constellation of the Dragon is found best in summer. In Draco's coils, NGC 6543, the Cat's Eye Planetary Nebula. Like this through the Hubble Space Telescope, blue-green in a moderate telescope. Northeast of Draco, a pretty array straddles the Milky Way. It's the constellation of Perseus, the hero, with its bright star Murphag. Beneath is Capella, from neighbouring Auriga. And upper right, the pattern of Andromeda, in Greek mythology the beautiful daughter of Cepheus and his queen Cassiopeia. From the northern hemisphere looking north, the constellations of summer, Perseus. Andromeda on the right, her parents Cassiopeia centre and Cepheus to the left. And in the wider view, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Draco and Bertes. From the mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere, the view to the south is dominated by three bright stars, Deneb, Vega and Altair. Strung high across the Milky Way, they form the Summer Triangle, not a constellation, but a seasonal signpost for observers in the north. To the right of the triangle, and outshone by Vega, its brightest member, lie the stars of Hercules. They're difficult to spot and are best identified by the box-like keystone of four central stars. South of Hercules is Ophiuchus, another dim constellation. Ophiuchus is entwined with a serpent. Its head, serpent's caput. Serpent's cauda, the tail. Our mission, however, is in Hercules, the constellation of the hero. At this season, the strong man is set upon his head. We approach the four stars of the keystone, all visible by naked eye: Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, and Pi. But Hercules only glitters through small telescopes. Chief in its treasures, M13. This globular cluster is so bright, it's visible by naked eye on clear moonless nights. The same goes for another globular cluster, just up from the keystone, M92, at 26,000 light-years, slightly more distant than its neighbour. By an arm of Hercules, NGC 6210, a planetary nebula around a dying star. South once more to Ophiuchus. Like Hercules, Ophiuchus comes alive only through binoculars and small telescopes. Here the globular cluster M12, a rather loose collection of stars, and virtually the twin of M10 next door. Still in Ophiuchus, to RS Ophiuchi, a binary system that explodes every few decades or so. A dense white dwarf unsettles the system as material is drawn from the larger star, a case of recurrent stellar indigestion. Again in Ophiuchus, and visible in small telescopes, Barnard's star, a dim red dwarf that's so close it has the greatest apparent motion across the sky. As it passes the Sun in 10,000 years' time, Barnard's star will be our nearest neighbour. Ophiuchus is where the last supernova was seen in our galaxy. Called Kepler's supernova, it erupted here in 1604. Next door to Ophiuchus, in Serpens Cauda, M16, the evocative Eagle Nebula. At its heart, the pillars of creation. Pictured here by the Hubble Space Telescope, this column of gas and dust, 4 light-years high, is cool interstellar hydrogen, where stars are born. Although this is Hubble, the Eagle Nebula is a sight to behold in a moderate telescope. Still looking south from the northern hemisphere, the brightest star of the summer triangle, Vega, signposts its own little grouping, the pattern of Lyra. It may be small, but this constellation of the lyre, or harp, is prominent. Indeed, Vega is the 5th brightest star of all, with 50 times the luminance of the Sun and just 25 light-years away. Vega is bound to be bright. Immediately to its left is the smaller star, Epsilon Lyrae, in fact a double star through binoculars. But in a modest telescope, the two are 4, a pair of binaries orbiting a common centre. Also in Lyra, and visible to the unaided eye, Beta Lyrae. It's a pair of peculiar stars, an eclipsing binary. They spiral hot gas into space. They're so close, mutual gravity makes them egg-shaped. Next to the odd couple, the Ring Nebula, M57, well seen in moderate telescopes. East of Lyra is Cygnus, the constellation of the Swan. Cygnus straddles the Milky Way and a dark lane called the Cygnus Rift. Actually looking like a swan, Cygnus is one of the few patterns to resemble the creature it represents. North of the Swan's tail, Deneb, lies M39, a cluster of some 30 stars, easily seen in binoculars. At the Swan's beak, the glorious double star, Alberio, or Beta Cygni, appears single by naked eye. Through a small telescope, the pair separate. They're so far apart they take over 7,000 years to orbit each other. To the tail again, and a familiar shape in a strange location. On the left, the North American nebula, NGC 7000, just visible by naked eye. And here, the duller Pelican Nebula. In a wing of the Swan is NGC 6826, the blinking planetary nebula. Through a small telescope, concentrate on the central star, and the nebula disappears. In the other wing of the Swan, to a supernova remnant, the Cygnus Loop, or Veil Nebula. The western part can be glimpsed in binoculars. The eastern segment needs a small telescope. In the neck of the swan to an X-ray source, Cygnus X1. A blue supergiant seems to be losing material to an object smaller than Earth, but with 7 times the mass of the Sun, probably a black hole, source of those X-rays on the right. Finally in Cygnus, close to its central star, an exploding galaxy, Cygnus A. From the core, energetic particles shoot to this gigantic lobe. At the other side of the core, a second lobe. Invisible optically, this is a radio image. South from Cygnus, another bird, Aquila, the constellation of the Eagle. Like Cygnus, Aquila spans the Milky Way with its brightest star marking the southern tip of the Summer Triangle. Flanked by fainter sentinels, brilliant Altair. Altair spins so fast, it's 1/6 wider than its high, an effect of centrifugal force. Southwest of Aquila, Scutum, the tiny constellation of the Shield, has no bright stars. But this is a rich area of the Milky Way, and through binoculars, Scutum has the stellar vista of M11, the wild duck cluster. A little lower, another open cluster, M26, good in small telescopes. At the other side of Aquila, to the northeast, a gaggle of small constellations. The first, lower left, is Delphinus, the dolphin, a faint but distinctive pattern. Of its 5 main points, we focus on the dolphin's nose, a double star discernible in small telescopes. It's Gamma Delphini, a showpiece, with the right-hand star twice as bright as the other. Right from Delphinus is Vulpecula, the constellation of the Fox. An unremarkable pattern, it lies in the Cygnus Rift. But off the eastern tip, Vulpecula has the Dumbbell Planetary Nebula. Visible in binoculars, it's one of the finest in the sky. At the south of Vulpecula, the Coathanger cluster. Through binoculars, 6 bright stars in a row and an inverted hook. Sagittare, the diminutive pattern of the arrow, is the 3rd smallest constellation, but it's easy to spot in this fertile region. Close to its shaft is the loose globular cluster, M71, a fuzz in binoculars, stars in a moderate telescope. Southeast in the arrow, a recurrent nova. It's the blasting binary of WZ Sagittae. Our last look south from the northern hemisphere starts with Antares, brightest star of Scorpius, the pattern of the scorpion. Up through the wealth of the Milky Way are familiar constellations, the uppermost signposted by the Summer Triangle. But this southern panorama is incomplete. From the Milky Way at the horizon comes Sagittarius, the constellation of the Archer. To the left, Capricornus, the stars of the Sea Goat. And farther east, Aquarius, the water bearer. The mid-latitudes of the Northern Hemisphere, from April to June, our viewpoint for the night sky. It's mid-evening, and we're looking north. Some familiar constellations of the previous quarter are now higher in the sky, like the pattern of the Plough or Big Dipper, part of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. The 7 main stars of the Big Dipper appear fixed, but go back or forward 100,000 years, and their positions change. This movement is called stellar proper motion. The upper and lower stars move quite differently to the others, because the others are a cluster traveling through space with a common speed and direction. To the left, We focus on 2 stars in the bowl of the Plough or Big Dipper. These are the so-called pointers, a direction finder. A line from Merak through Dubhe finds the pole star Polaris. Polaris is the northernmost tip of Ursa Minor, the pattern of the Little Bear. Ursa Minor and Ursa Major are mythological characters banished to the heavens. The Great Bear, a nymph transformed for an illicit love affair, the Little Bear, her son, transformed for mistakenly hunting her. The god Jupiter swung the pair into the sky, and in the process stretched their tails. To the right of Ursa Minor, and snaking towards Ursa Major, Draco, the faint pattern of the dragon. 5,000 years ago, Draco's bright star Thuban was the pole star. It lies on the great circle through which celestial north travels once every 26,000 years. Yesterday Thuban, today Polaris. The shift is caused by Earth gently wobbling on its axis, like a child spinning top. We need a wider perspective to find a small pattern virtually overhead. It's tucked away near Ursa Major, above the handle of the Plough or Big Dipper. These are the fields of the hunting dogs, the little constellation of Canis Venatici. We're looking for a galaxy, the first to have its spiral structure recognized. This drawing from 1846 is by an Irish astronomer. His subject, M51, the Whirlpool Galaxy. Visible in binoculars, stunning through the Hubble Space Telescope. Nearby to another spiral, M63, a misty patch in small telescopes, unmistakably the Sunflower Galaxy through the biggest. And close by, another patch in small telescopes becomes this compact spiral in big instruments, M94. Still in the north and looking north, we search for 2 rather obscure patterns. The first is above the northwestern horizon, Camelopardalis, the constellation of the giraffe. The second zigzags through much of the western sky, the dim stars of Lynx. Finally, in the northern sky, some signposts from Ursa Major. From 2 stars in the Plough, the Big Dipper, a line extends to Regulus, brightest star in the constellation of Leo the Lion. But all we see here is the lion's head. Back in Ursa Major, an arc from the bear's tail curves overhead toward the southern sky. It leads to the bright star Arcturus in the constellation of Boötes, the herdsman. We're now looking south. The arc continues southward to Spica, a close binary with 2,000 times the luminosity of the Sun. Spica is in Virgo, the constellation of the Virgin. Looking south from the mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere, this is the season of galaxies. For with the Milky Way well clear, the view beyond our galaxy is unobscured. With Regulus already glimpsed in the northern sky, all of Leo is visible to the south. In mythology, Leo is the lion killed by Hercules as one of his 12 labors. The 6 stars at the right, resembling a reverse question mark, are the sickle of Leo. At the left, forming the rear quarters of the lion, 3 stars make a triangle. Denebula is from the Arabic meaning tail. Just to the south of Leo, to a dim red dwarf, 3rd nearest star to the Sun. This is Wolf 359. Occasionally it flares to twice its normal brightness. Leo abounds in galaxies, most good in small telescopes. Here, a galactic trio. One of them, NGC 3628, appears disrupted as it interacts with its neighbors, M65 and M66. Still in Leo and a little to the west, 3 more galaxies, M105 on the right, NGC 3285 upper left, and NGC 3379. Close by is this spiral galaxy, M96. Overhead from Leo is Leo Minor, the constellation of the Little Lion. It nestles between the rear paws of the Great Bear Ursa Major, just visible above. To find sextans, the sextant, we look for Regulus in Leo. Sextans is directly south, an obscure pattern whose brightest stars are barely visible to the naked eye. But a good telescope reveals the lens-shaped spindle galaxy, NGC 3115. East of Leo to another dim constellation, Coma Berenices, supposedly the hair of an Egyptian queen. Here is the most famous edge-on spiral galaxy, NGC 4565, visible in small telescopes. Nearby is the Coma cluster, more than 1,000 galaxies. Sadly, most are beyond the range of small telescopes. Between Coma Berenices and Virgo, more than 3,000 galaxies, like M88, M91, M98, and M99, all spirals of the Great Virgo cluster. Overhead from Coma Berenices, in Canis Venatici, to the rich globular cluster, M3, a fuzzy patch in binoculars, like this in a big telescope. South now to Virgo, second largest constellation of the heavens. Virgo is the only female figure in the patterns of the zodiac. Spica is her brightest star. To the west is Porrima, or Gamma Virginis. Porrima is a double star. From Earth, it's sometimes hard to distinguish the two, but by 2015, they'll appear well apart. North of Porrima, and a return to the Virgo cluster. We're at the heart of this mighty galactic club. These are the galaxies of the local supercluster, to which our own galaxy, the Milky Way, belongs. As hazy patches, several dozen galaxies are visible in modest telescopes, but these images are from the most powerful professional instruments. The wonders of the Virgo cluster. Still in the Virgo cluster, the elliptical galaxy, NGC 4261. As a radio image, two jets stream from the core, evidence of a massive black hole at this galactic center. In animation, matter swirls inward from an accretion disk. Some matter jets at right angles to the disk, saved at the brink by the shock wave around the central vortex. The black hole consumes the equivalent of 40 Earths a day. Again, in the Virgo cluster, this elliptical galaxy, Virgo A, has an even bigger black hole, its jet captured by the Hubble Space Telescope. Here, in animation, the black hole is supermassive, swallowing the equivalent of 10 Earths an hour. It has the mass of 3 billion suns. Once more in Virgo, to the most incredible black hole of all. Visible in a moderate telescope, this is 3C273, the brightest known quasar. Quasars burn at the center of remote galaxies. So fierce and bright, they outshine the galaxies themselves. This radio image from 3 billion light-years away shows a jet streaking 150,000 light-years into space. Here's the jet, in visible light, shooting from the heart of the galaxy. Quasars, fueled by the hungriest black holes and consuming several hundred Earths an hour, are among the most luminous and powerful objects in the universe. Finally in Virgo, away from the main concentration of galaxies to M104, the Sombrero Galaxy. Visible in a moderate telescope, the Sombrero conceals another supermassive black hole. Southwest of Virgo, the squarish pattern of Corvus, the Crow. But we're headed northeast for the constellation of Boötes and its brilliant star, Arcturus. Arcturus is a giant with the same mass as the Sun, but 25 times its diameter. Here's the Sun to scale. East from Boötes to the Northern Crown. This is Corona Borealis, 6 main stars with the brightest Alphecca at the center. But we target a much fainter object, easy in binoculars. It's the giant star, R Coronae Borealis. At irregular intervals it dims 1,000-fold as sooty clouds darken the atmosphere, only to clear again. Still in Corona Borealis, to a star visible with a small telescope. T Coronae Borealis, the blaze star, is so called because it's a recurrent nova. A white dwarf and its companion that once every century or so go bang. In the far west, a line from the sickle of Leo leads to Alphard, the solitary one. Alphard is the brightest star in the sprawling constellation of Hydra, the sea serpent. In mythology, Hydra was a 9-headed monster slain during the 12 labors of Hercules. Just south of its belly to NGC 3242, a planetary nebula called the Ghost of Jupiter. Still in Hydra, just south of Corvus, the globular cluster M68. A fuzzy blob in binoculars, stars become clear in a modest telescope. To the east and beneath Hydra's tail, M83, the southern pinwheel galaxy, visible in binoculars. The blue regions of the arms are full of hot young stars. Nearby, 2 galaxies distorted by their interaction. The larger, NGC 5078, the other, IC 879. Finally, around Hydra's tail, more galactic interaction. This is the warped disk galaxy, ESO 510 G13. The distortion of the dark disk may be the result of a close encounter with another galaxy, or the relic of a merged galaxy. Still looking south, we go east of Virgo, toward the split constellation of Serpens the Serpent. This is the reptile's head, Serpens caput. With the tail farther east, we close on the star Unu Kalhai, the serpent's neck, and nearby M5, one of the finest globular clusters, 12 billion years old. It's visible in binoculars. South from Serpens caput, to the least distinguished member of the zodiac, the dull stars of Libra. Libra, which looks more like a high-flying kite, is the constellation of the scales. They belong to the goddess of justice. As the only single green star in the heavens, Libra's brightest, Beta Librae, is also known as Zuban el Kamali. Alpha Librae is Zuban el Ganubi, Arabic names. The skies from the northern hemisphere. A wider view to the south, and beneath Orion, Lepus, the constellation of the Hare. To the right, Eridanus, the celestial river, one of the largest and longest constellations. With Orion as our pointer, extend a line from the belt and we reach the bright star Aldebaran. Aldebaran is in Taurus. Taurus is a constellation of the zodiac, so the sun, the moon and the planets sometimes move against these background stars. Taurus is the constellation of the bull, Aldebaran his glinting eye. It's a useful shape, for the face of the bull is this V-shaped cluster of stars, the Hyades or Hyades, well seen in binoculars. Nearby another cluster, the Pleiades or Seven Sisters. Pronounced Pleiades in Europe, the naked eye sees 7 stars, binoculars dozens more. In fact, there are hundreds, hot, young and bright. Taurus again, and to the tip of the bull's horn, to the star Zeta Tauri, close by, through a small telescope, a misty patch. But through a big telescope, the Crab Nebula, the debris of a supernova. the result of a gigantic stellar explosion. The supernova was seen next to a crescent moon in 1054, this a cave painting by the Pueblo Indians. Within the Crab Nebula, a remnant of the exploded star spins at 30 times a second, beaming radiation. It's a pulsar, or neutron star, matter jetting from its poles. A line from Orion's belt through Betelgeuse leads to the star Castor. Castor is white, while its near neighbor Pollux is orange. They're the twins of Gemini, another constellation of the zodiac. The respective stars form the heads of this celestial pair, supposedly the protectors of sailors. But fact is stranger than myth. In a small telescope, Castor appears as a double star. Spectroscopy reveals 6, 4 hot and white, 2 dull and red. Triple binaries, too close to separate, even with a big telescope. Again in Gemini, just visible to the naked eye, the cluster M35, hundreds of stars. Looking south from the mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere, this is the season of galaxies. For with the Milky Way well clear, the view beyond our galaxy is unobscured. With Regulus already glimpsed in the northern sky, all of Leo is visible to the south. In mythology, Leo is the lion killed by Hercules as one of his 12 labors. The 6 stars at the right, resembling a reverse question mark, are the sickle of Leo. At the left, forming the rear quarters of the lion, 3 stars make a triangle. Denebula is from the Arabic, meaning tail. Just to the south of Leo, to a dim red dwarf, third nearest star to the sun. This is Wolf 359. Occasionally it flares to twice its normal brightness. Leo abounds in galaxies, most good in small telescopes. Here, a galactic trio. One of them, NGC 3628, appears disrupted as it interacts with its neighbors, M65 and M66. Still in Leo and a little to the west, 3 more galaxies, M105 on the right, NGC 3285 upper left, and NGC 3379. Close by is this spiral galaxy, M96. South now to Virgo, second largest constellation of the heavens. Virgo is the only female figure in the patterns of the zodiac. Spica is her brightest star. To the west is Porrima, or Gamma Virginis. Porrima is a double star. From Earth, it's sometimes hard to distinguish the two, but by 2015, they'll appear well apart. North of Porrima, and a return to the Virgo cluster. We're at the heart of this mighty galactic club. These are the galaxies of the local supercluster, to which our own galaxy, the Milky Way, belongs. As hazy patches, several dozen galaxies are visible in modest telescopes, but these images are from the most powerful professional instruments. The wonders of the Virgo cluster. South from Serpens Caput to the least distinguished member of the zodiac, the dull stars of Libra. Libra, which looks more like a high-flying kite, is the constellation of the scales. They belong to the goddess of justice. As the only single green star in the heavens, Libra's brightest, Beta Librae, is also known as Zuban el Kamali. Alpha Librae is Zuban el Ganubi, Arabic names. Our last look south from the northern hemisphere starts with Antares, brightest star of Scorpius, the pattern of the scorpion. Up through the wealth of the Milky Way are familiar constellations, the uppermost signposted by the summer triangle. But this southern panorama is incomplete. From the Milky Way at the horizon comes Sagittarius, the constellation of the Archer. To the left, Capricornus, the stars of the Sea Goat. And farther east, Aquarius, the Water Bearer. East of both Monoceros and Gemini to the rather obscure stars of Cancer the Crab, another constellation of the zodiac. In Greek mythology, the crab was crushed by Hercules as he fought Hydra, the sea serpent. The crab was compensated with a place in the stars. And what stars as we approach M44, the Beehive cluster. By naked eye, a misty patch. In binoculars, a swarm of 50 stars. West from Cetus to a zodiacal constellation, one of 3 linked with water. This is Aquarius, the water bearer, named by the Babylonians who visualized a figure pouring water from a pitcher, an image still used today. To the left in Aquarius, and visible by small telescope, is the variable star R Aquarii. As a Mira type, it's a supergiant with a white dwarf drawing off material. Periodic fireworks result. To the right in Aquarius is NGC 7009, the Saturn Planetary Nebula, like this in the Hubble Space Telescope, reminiscent of Saturn in small instruments. Higher in Aquarius, to what appears as a fuzzy blob in binoculars, M2, a rich and compact globular cluster lying well beyond our galactic centre. East of Pisces is where the Sun used to move from south to north across the celestial equator. 2,000 years ago, the constellation of Aries marked the spring equinox. Today, this annual transition happens in Pisces. In mythology, Aries is the ram whose golden fleece was sought by Jason and the Argonauts. A wider view to locate a faint but distinctive pattern between Aries and Andromeda, the tiny constellation of Triangulum, the Triangle. Its 3 main stars were well known to the ancients, resembling the Greek letter delta. To their right is M33, the Pinwheel or Triangulum galaxy. This face-on spiral, good in binoculars, belongs to our local group, although it's smaller than the Milky Way and Andromeda. Immediately beneath Andromeda and Pegasus are the faint stars of Pisces. Pisces is the constellation of the fishes, supposedly tied from their tails to the star Alpha Piscium. The pattern has 2 special features. The first is this circlet of stars. The second is that the Sun, the Moon and the planets all pass through Pisces as a member of the zodiac. Close to the upper fish lies the galaxy M74. Although the brightest in Pisces, it still needs a moderate telescope.